Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve. Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Detective drama this hour. William Gargan starring first as Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator. This episode from January 16th, 1952, the episode entitled Fatal Appointment.
William Gargan stars as Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator.
Spotting a murderer isn't easy. They don't help. They can be anyone, any age, either sex, rich, poor, or in between. They've got one difference, though. They kill people.
The National Broadcasting Company presents William Gargan in another transcribed drama of mystery and adventure with America's #1 detective, Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator.
Barrie Craig speaking. Lots of people shy away from going to a privatized office. I guess they figure it isn't respectable. I guess when you spend a couple of minutes thinking about it, they're right. It isn't respectable. Because it's a confession that something's wrong with their lives. And what's wrong is rarely a bookkeeping error or a mistake in spelling.
You don't care for the hamburger, Craig?
Huh? Oh, the hamburger's fine, Willie.
Then stop looking at it like it was still alive.
I wouldn't worry about it.
No?
No. Even if it was still struggling, your coffee would kill it.
What's the matter with the coffee you get at Willie's Wagon?
Nothing. I'm sure you use only the finest grade of sulfuric acid in it.
You got a tender stomach?
I doubt it. I'm still alive.
You're a fine type of customer I get here. Wise guys. Wise guys?
Hmm?
Look at your hamburger. She ain't in your price class.
Who? Oh, say, you could be right.
That fur she's dragging around was contributed by only the highest type minks.
You'd better wait on her. She might get impatient.
I can't.
Huh?
I ain't had a manicure in weeks.
You are Mr. Craig.
I am?
I waited outside the building in which you have your office until you left. I followed you here.
You're allergic to offices?
Well, I couldn't... do you mind talking business here?
Would you like something to eat or drink?
No.
Willie, go polish your coffee iron.
Huh? Oh, yeah. Well, it don't need it.
You're...
Viola Henning. Mrs. Viola Henning.
Uh-huh. And the business you wanted to talk about was...
My husband is keeping an appointment tonight, and I want you to...
An appointment with whom? A business associate?
No. With a girl. A girl named Muriel.
I see. Where?
The Grammont Hotel.
She works there?
No. She's taken a room there. I overheard my husband making the appointment.
I don't especially go for divorce cases.
Oh, no. It isn't for that. I'd never divorce Dan. I just want to know.
What time's the appointment?
8.
And all you want to know is if your husband, in fact, does keep this appointment.
Yes. Would $100 be enough?
Oh, more than enough.
Then here you are.
Thanks.
You won't tell anyone.
Investigators with loose mouths don't last very long, Mrs. Henning.
I suppose not. I'll phone you in the morning.
Fine.
Good night.
Good night. Yeah.
For that, you need a license?
Huh?
The babe and the minks.
Just a case, Willie, on the face of it.
The face wasn't bad.
No, but what's underneath? I killed some time with Willie. His feeling is he's a very good gin player. I won enough hamburger for half a dozen cases of acute indigestion and then went on to the Hotel Grammont. I let the clerk in on my little secret. I told him I was looking for a maiden aunt. For $5, he believed me. I found a Muriel who'd booked a room at 8 o'clock. The full name was Muriel Jones. Jones. The room number was 807. The time was 20 minutes after 8. I decided I'd be the boy bringing the ice water. Maybe they hadn't ordered ice water. That would be all right. I didn't have any with me. I lifted my hand to knock, and I didn't get around to it. The door was locked. Nothing happened after the shot, so I knocked after all. Maybe I was naive, but kicking the door in didn't seem practical. I turned out to be right.
Mr. Craig!
Hello, Mrs. Henning. Mind if I come in?
No.
There was a girl lying on the floor. Her eyes were open, and they stared up at the ceiling of the room. It wasn't a very interesting ceiling, but that didn't matter. She wasn't seeing it. Dead. Who was she?
Muriel. The girl I told you.
Yeah. Except you didn't mention you were also planning on showing up here.
I couldn't help it. I had to see her.
She isn't much worth looking at right now. 2-room suite. That the back door?
I don't know.
Yeah. Back door and fire stairs. What else couldn't you help, Mrs. Henning?
You don't have to be so indirect, Mr. Craig.
That means what?
I killed her.
Uh-huh. What's her name?
Muriel. Muriel Jones.
No.
Why do you say no?
That dress she's wearing. Too good for a hotel like this.
That's the only name I knew her by.
Those gloves you're wearing.
They're for driving. Well, that is, I wore them so that I wouldn't leave fingerprints.
It doesn't explain why you didn't use that back door to get out of here after you shot her.
I changed my mind about hiding my guilt.
Tell me how you killed her. Start outside in the hallway. You came to the door, you knocked.
Yes.
She opened the door.
When I came in, she shut the door. She didn't know who I was. I told her.
She liked that?
It didn't seem to matter to her. I accused her of taking my husband from me. She laughed at me. So I shot her.
You had a gun?
Yes.
You shot her. She fell down and died. You heard me knock, you hesitated, then you opened the door.
Yes.
I've had time to look around the room. And I've looked.
What difference does that make?
You say you shot her.
I did.
What did you do with the gun? Eat it? Mrs. Henning didn't have any answers. I found a phone and let her notify homicide that she'd been out hunting. I left her in that hotel room with the dead girl. Both of them would wait. The butler at the Henning home didn't seem delighted to see me. I think it was my tie bothered him most. I figured if I ever wanted to visit again, I'd get it hand-painted.
Johns tells me your name is Craig.
Johns tells you the truth, Mr. Henning.
Yes. Well, what...
I'm a confidential investigator. I could show you credentials.
Oh, there's no reason to waste them on me. What can I do for you?
Is your wife in?
My wife? Why, yes, she's upstairs asleep.
Asleep? It's a little early for that, isn't it?
I don't see how that's any of your concern.
I guess you don't. Would you mind asking her to come downstairs?
I most certainly would.
I'm afraid you'll have to anyway.
I don't see why.
You're not curious enough about why a private detective is calling?
I'm merely assuming that you'll inform me sooner or later.
Let's say for the time being that it's because your wife hired me to do a job for her.
What job?
The information is confidential.
I refuse to believe
That's silly. All you have to do is ask your wife.
Well, yes, but...
Or are you afraid to?
I resent...
Don't bother resenting. Check with your wife. If she doesn't want to come down, you can throw me out.
Well, all right.
I didn't know exactly what made him go through with it. Maybe it was because his tie was already hand-painted.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah?
My wife isn't feeling very well. She can't come down.
Uh-huh. When did you see Muriel Jones last?
Jones?
Let's just leave it at Muriel. We'll discuss last name some other time.
We won't discuss it at all.
You're not very big. I could push you aside and go upstairs.
You wouldn't do that.
Oh, you're not sure of that. So when did you see Muriel last?
Well, why not ask the lady?
Oh, there's a technical difficulty. She's dead.
She's what?
Dead.
You're quite serious?
It's not a good subject to joke about.
Well, how did she...
She was murdered.
Oh, well, who would want to kill her?
That might depend on who she really was.
Her name was Muriel Carter. She sang at the Bright Star. Her voice was very beautiful.
She's still dead.
I find that hard to believe. She had such a rare quality.
It didn't stop the murderer.
She was, in her way and in our time, a lovely princess.
I've heard of the Bright Star. It's run by a man named Thompson. He's short, fat, and greedy. As far as I know, he doesn't hire princesses.
Now, what do you mean by that? She sang for Thompson, that's all.
And what did she do for you?
I think you'd better get out.
I'd like to, except I've got a client. I'm in the middle, whether I like it or not. I could say I don't like it, but what good would that do? Did you keep your appointment at the Grammont Hotel tonight?
That's none of your... I had no appointment tonight.
It might pay you to keep in touch with your wife. Good night, Henning.
Good night.
Your wife, who's upstairs and not very well.
Yes?
By this time, she's also downtown having a conversation with the district attorney. Did I say good night?
From January 16th, 1952, Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator on Classic Radio Theater. Classic Radio Theater family, you know our friend Mike Lindell has a passion to help everyone get the best sleep of your life. He didn't stop by just creating the best pillow. He created the best bed sheets ever. They look and feel great, which means an even better night's sleep for me because, you know, I'm working like 67 hours a day. Now, Mike's offering the best deal on his Giza Dreams bed sheets ever. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. You'll never want to sleep on anything else once you slept on a set of Giza Dream sheets. A special offer for you right now. You can get a set of Giza sheets for as low as $29.98. Call 1-800-928-4715. Use the promo code Wyatt. Or go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Wyatt. It's good on anything on the website. That number again, 1-800-928-4715. Use my promo code Wyatt. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater on your favorite station. Now more of Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator, January 16th, 1952.
Mr. Henning's face over the hand-painted tie wasn't very nice to look at. I stopped looking at it, climbed into my car, and got away from there. It took me a while to notice the black coupe on my tail. When I did, I decided I didn't like it. Halfway down a block, I swung my car across the road and got out. The car tailing me burned brake lining and managed to pull up.
Hey, get that car out of my way.
What was that?
I said get that car out of my way.
Maybe you'd better help me. Get out.
You a wise guy something? You're blocking traffic.
What traffic?
Okay, wise guy, I'll get out.
That's better. You're looking for me?
Let go my arm. Who do you think you are?
Who do you think I am?
Okay. Now maybe you won't be so smart.
That's a nice gun. Got a license for it?
You in the license business?
No, but hey, I'll borrow it. Thanks.
You can't.
Who put you on my tail?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Who put you on my tail?
You'd like to know, wouldn't you? Hey, you can't get away with beating me up.
Am I going to beat you up?
Then let go.
Actually, I don't know. I could.
Look, it won't get you no place.
I'm not going anyplace. I've got lots of time for you.
Go me, will you?
How can I? I'm trying to decide.
Decide what?
Whether to beat you up or not.
You got my gun. You're bigger than I am.
That's right, so maybe you better tell me. Who put you on me?
Mac Thompson.
Thompson? Gentleman who runs the Bright Star, huh? Pull your car over to the curb. We'll ride in mine. I kind of need a star in my life, especially a bright star. His name was Lester. He wasn't very brave without a gun. Gunmen rarely are. He pulled his car over to the curb, got into mine, and we went to the Bright Star. We didn't disturb the customers. We used a back entrance, the kind of entrance I was accustomed to. Private investigators don't rate socially.
This here's Mr. Thompson's office.
Don't knock.
Mr. Thompson.
Lester, what are you doing here?
He's trailing me. He trailed me right into your office, Thompson.
I had a little trouble with him. He's got my gun.
Indeed. And you'd be,
Craig. Barrie Craig.
Oh, a boy with a license. I might mention that Lester has a license for that gun of his, too.
Makes it nice for the city taxes.
You, could get into trouble taking his gun, Craig.
He could get into worse trouble pointing it at people.
Well, he threw his weight around, Mr. Thompson.
All right, get out, Lester.
Okay, only you ain't sore at me, Mr. Thompson. I couldn't help it.
Get out.
Yeah, Mr. Thompson. Yeah.
Lester isn't a very strong character.
I wasn't a character analysis of Lester that brought you here, Craig.
No.
Now, I don't want any trouble with you. I don't think you want any with me. I have a friend or two in the department.
That's nice.
That license you own has to be renewed every year.
Now you're frightening me.
I have no intention to, merely making things clear.
Thanks. Now, would you make it clear why you put Lester on my tail?
I didn't. He, misunderstood his instructions.
Uh-huh. How was Muriel's act tonight?
Muriel?
Muriel Carter.
She didn't appear tonight.
Why not?
Well, you know how these things are.
I don't. Thompson, where were you around 8:15 tonight?
Here, reading a good book.
How many witnesses?
4, 8. How many would you like?
You've got a large payroll.
Thank you. Now that you've stopped imitating a detective, what happened at 8:15 tonight?
Muriel Carter quit the Bright Star.
You practicing to be a theatrical agent?
2 bullets hit her.
Oh? How sordid.
Not to mention fatal. You know something? I'd like to have the gun those bullets came out of.
At 8:15 tonight, I was here reading a good book. 8 witnesses, Craig.
That ought to be enough. Thompson.
Yes?
I don't believe the performance.
I beg your pardon?
You're playing it too tough, too straight.
Which means?
I think you went for her.
That may be true. It's a habit of mine.
I've seen her. More than habit, Thompson. She was worth a gross of your ordinary stock.
Possibly. So I'm all broken up inside by the news.
It wasn't news. Why was Lester staked out at the Henning home?
Good night, Mr. Craig.
I'm still looking for that gun. Good night. The hallway outside Thompson's office had run out of lights. It was dark, and I headed for the floor quick, but halfway down, I found out it wasn't entirely my own idea. You get knocked unconscious, and it's dull for a while, because you're unconscious. But after a while, things change. Something began to pound. It must have taken me 20 minutes to discover it was my own head. I lifted it off the ground, and the air smelled good, which meant I'd traveled. There were trees around in the sky, from which handful of facts I deduced I was out in the country. The gun someone had been careful to put in my hand was still warm. I got to my feet and crossed over to him. He was lying a dozen feet away. Dying hadn't improved his looks any. Lester was very dead. It wasn't a frame-up especially. It wouldn't stick. But it did help use up time. Time? For what? Headquarters had a nice green lamp burning outside.
The trouble with hanging around police headquarters is you can't ever lock the front door.
Hello, Lieutenant Rogers.
Anybody comes in. Even... Hold on a minute while I look around and whisper. Even private detectives.
Some fun.
Barrie, you're not your usual blithe and buxom self.
No background.
If you start dragging in my college degree...
Hide your Phi Beta Kappa key and send a couple of your boys out to my car.
There's something different about your car tonight?
Yeah. I've got a corpse in it.
Oh, how ducky. Anybody I know?
I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, say, Trav, I'd like to talk to Mrs. Henning.
Mm-hmm. I've seen her. I'd like to talk to her, too.
What?
The district attorney didn't care for her confession. She didn't have a gun to go with it. So he threw her out.
How long ago?
An hour, maybe. Why?
I want to talk to her.
You're keeping it on a very high moral plane. Barrie, why do you think she confessed to the killing?
Maybe because she loved her husband. I understand it happened.
It must be something special.
Sure. Wears hand-painted ties. So long, Trav.
Would you like company? I talk very politely.
Forget it. I'll be back later. Maybe I'll even tell you about the corpse you've got. My head didn't feel too good. Maybe I was wrong. I'd find out. The Henning house was dark when I got to it. I didn't worry about the butler much. It turned out that I didn't have to. The front door was open. The skating rink they used for a foyer was dark, but a line of light under the door down the hall told me where I wanted to go. No! Nobody noticed my low bow as I went through the door.
Oh, Mr. Craig.
Which way?
The window.
Caught a tail light going around the corner outside. There's nothing special about a tail light. I was late. Mrs. Henning. She fainted. It was a break for her. She could stop looking at her husband. As for him, maybe he was looking at something, but it wasn't anything a pair of living eyes could see. Lieutenant Rogers, homicide. Trav? Barrie. I'm at Mrs. Henning's home. Yeah. It also used to be Mr. Henning's home, but he won't be living here anymore. He's moving into smaller quarters, underground. Take it easy, Mrs. Henning. You've got lots of time to settle down with your husband's death.
It isn't possible.
It's possible. It happens all the time.
But who could have done...
That's for later. You wouldn't want to confess to this murder, too, would you?
How can you say things like that?
Practice. I need a little information quick. The truth, maybe. What happened at the Grammont Hotel? For real?
The hotel? I got there after Dan did. From the hallway, I could hear him and that girl quarreling. And then the shots. I wanted to run, but I went in. Dan wasn't there, but... Oh, I can't go on with this.
You don't have to. Just hang around and greet the cops, huh? No matter how many times you've seen the dead, they still don't appeal to you, even with hand-painted ties. I concentrated on the furnishings. They were nice. They weren't the kind of stuff you buy if you're a private investigator. I stopped being morbid and just waited for the cops. They came.
I brought a few friends along, Barrie. Do you mind?
I don't mind, Tran.
I was worried. Where's the object of our affections?
Over near the window.
I hope he hasn't left. He hasn't left. Boys, make with the routine, huh? Wouldn't he cash a check for you?
I'm not killing people this week.
Mrs. Henning?
No. Henning was shot from outside the window. Mrs. Henning was in the room when I arrived and heard the shots.
That's nice. Maybe it's the perfect crime.
Maybe. Mrs. Henning's in her bedroom. I imagine she'll wake up if you knock. So long.
And where, if I'm not too inquisitive, would you be going?
You're too inquisitive.
Barrie.
Don't worry about it. All I'm doing is looking for a star to hitch your wagon to. A death wagon. I figured Mr. Thompson wouldn't be expecting action very quick. I'd been lucky, or maybe it was just because my head was so hard. I'd come to after the sapping in a hurry. I'd been in a hurry since then. I was still in a hurry.
Who is it?
I didn't feel that door very strong.
Craig.
Craig. Hello, Thompson.
You wrecked that door.
I'm too stupid to knock.
Hold it where you are.
What a nice big gun you've got, Grandma.
I said stop.
Okay. I'm up against your desk anyway. Nice hunk of mahogany.
What do you want?
You.
And Philip Gargan will probably get you. Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator, starring William Gargan, going back to January 16th, 1952, The Fatal Appointment, The Conclusion, and another yours truly Johnny Dollar story. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues in a moment. And thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater here on your favorite station. Now the conclusion of Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator, Fatal Appointment, January 16th, 1952.
Look, I'm in no mood.
This isn't comedy. I want you for murder, Thompson.
Why don't you come and get me?
I will if I have to.
You under the impression you're bulletproof?
I'm glad you reminded me. You're a nice hunk of mahogany. Pity it got in your way. I hadn't hit him very hard. He came to after a while, and we went down to headquarters.
Barrie, where?
Did I go after Henning died? I went to collect Mr. Thompson here. He's going to stay for a while.
You might mention a few charges.
Sure. Murder. Murder of a man named Lester. Murder of a man named Dan Henning. Good enough?
Very good. Any objections, Thompson?
No objections. I killed Lester. He was a weak character. Craig made a point of it. He was tying me in too tightly.
The boy's got good grammar.
I'm appreciating it. How about Henning? Why kill him?
Because he murdered Muriel. You didn't know it, did you? He murdered Muriel. And even now, with me where I am, I can almost figure it's worth it. You see, I did know her.
I left Thompson with Lieutenant Rogers. Maybe, according to his own bookkeeping, he'd been right. I'd seen Muriel Carter and was willing to give him an outside doubt. My job wasn't finished, though. I had a final report to make to my client.
Mr. Craig.
Yeah. Mind if I come in?
I don't think I'll ever mind anything anymore. Come in.
Thank you.
The police are gone. They took Dan.
You better sit down.
Yes, hadn't I?
You hired me. I've got to finish things up.
Things? What things? I didn't know there was anything left.
Oh, nothing important, but... Mrs. Henning, did your husband ever wear driving gloves?
No.
Or any other kind?
No, he didn't.
Thompson's been arrested. Thompson's the man who killed your husband.
Oh? Well, that won't help Dan, will it?
No. Thompson was in love with Muriel Carter.
He had company.
The only thing is, Thompson wasn't the one who killed Muriel.
I know. What does it matter?
That confession you handed me at the hotel didn't make very much sense without the gun.
That's what the district attorney said.
The cops found the gun.
Did they?
It belonged to your husband. They found his prints on it. Very clear prints.
Why bother?
Too clear.
Too clear, Mr. Craig?
That's right.
But...
A man fires a gun. The prints tend to be smudged a bit from handling. But suppose a gun is wiped clean. Then the man's fingers are carefully pressed on the handle. Then you'd have his prints. But they'd be too clear.
I never knew that.
I guess you didn't.
Why are you telling all this to me?
You're my client. Your husband didn't wear gloves. The police give a murder suspect the paraffin test. Matter of routine. You see, when a man fires a gun, small powder particles are embedded in the skin.
Oh?
Your husband hadn't fired a gun recently.
Well, but look, I'm tired. I'm not sure what you're trying to say. With Dan dead, they've got his murderer. Why did they make all these tests?
Well, I suggested it. Because Muriel Carter was registered at the Grammont Hotel as Muriel Jones.
She was ashamed.
A club singer, working for a man like Thompson.
She was going to meet Dan.
No. She didn't take that room for romance. She took it for a meeting with you.
This is so confusing.
You were jealous. You hated Muriel Carter. You arranged that meeting at the Grammont Hotel. You suggested she register under an assumed name. It would look shadier that way.
Shadier? To who?
Me, the private detective you hired in good faith.
Oh.
You let your husband know about the meeting. That's why he was there. That's why he took the gun away with him. That's why he lied to me later, said you were upstairs sleeping.
That isn't why
Excuse me, I should have said how. The why was because he may have loved you once. You made your confession, nobody believed. Thompson figured your husband for the killer and killed him in turn. But there was something wrong. The paraffin test showed your husband hadn't killed Muriel Carter.
Then who did?
I'm a funny kind of investigator, Mrs. Henning. Most guys in my business get cynical. They wouldn't believe you if you told them the time, unless you had 39 witnesses and a testimonial from your neighborhood church.
And you?
Oh, I'm different. I always believe a client. That's why we better get started, Mrs. Henning.
We're going
downtown, headquarters, where they'll put you under arrest for murder. One way or another, the evidence is all there. You see, when you made that confession in the hotel room, I believed you. Good night, folks. See you next week.
You have been listening to William Gargan in another exciting transcribed mystery drama from the adventures of Barrie Craig, Confidential Investigator. Tonight's story, Fatal Appointment, was written by Lou Vittis. Next week, it's the strange story titled The Deadly Fight, about which Barrie Craig has this to say.
Next week, I meet a widow who can't find tears, an obituary notice in search of a corpse, and a boxing champ whose biggest win is a fight strictly off the record. See you next week, folks. Featured in the role of Iola was Joan Alexander. Barrie Craig, starring William Gargan, was under the direction of Hyman Brown. This is Don Pardo speaking.
January 16th, 1952, Barrie Craig Confidential Investigator on Classic Radio Theater. Now we start another yours truly Johnny Dollar story. This one originally broadcast January 16th, 1956, part 1 of the 5-part Ricardo Amerigo Matter.
From Hollywood, it's time now for...
Johnny Dollar.
John, this is Harry Branson of Philadelphia Mutual.
Harry, what are you doing in town?
I'm not. At least not in your town.
But you've got a case for me.
Do you know anything about violins?
Oh, don't tell me. So he opened up his fiddle case and out came a submachine gun, that it?
John, that technique went out with Prohibition. Now, seriously, this case contains a genuine Amati.
Good. What's an Amati?
One of the finest, most expensive violins ever made. This one was insured for $30,000.
Was?
Yes. Now, someone has to find it for us. What's more...
Okay, Harry, I'm on my way.
Tonight and every weekday night, Bob Bailey in the transcribed adventures of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to the Philadelphia Mutual Liability and Casualty Company. The following is an accounting of expenditures incurred during my investigation of the Ricardo Amerigo matter. Expense account item 1, 1240, train fare and incidentals to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I took the train because Harry Branson didn't seem to be in any particular hurry, and I kind of like a slow look at the countryside this time of year. When I got to Philadelphia, I checked in at the Bellevue Stratford, shaved and showered, then went over to Harry Branson's office in the Security First building on Walnut Street.
You deceived me, John. I thought when we talked long distance that you'd be here right away.
But instead of flying down, you
Old
took the train.
Sobersides Branson
Possibly
hadn't
a loss of
changed a
valuable
bit.
time, I don't
Hair
know.
a little grayer than the last
But I hope
time
to
I'd
know
seen him,
as soon
perhaps.
as I hear further from
But
Amerigo.
still the same serious lad
We'll see
who
what, if
always
anything, he
acted
can
as though
tell
he
us.
was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Now, I feel a deep personal concern over the whole matter because it was a man I put in this office myself who issued the policies, both of them.
2 policies on this fiddle you were talking about?
No, John, one on the Amati violin, $30,000.
Yeah?
And one on Ricardo Amerigo himself for $20,000.
Who is Ricky?
Who?
Well, isn't that what you said his name is?
I'm sure I didn't mention anyone by the... Ricardo Amerigo, yes.
Well, where's he playing? The Purple Cat or maybe Wee Willie's joint over on
John, this man is a concert violinist, or was. He's disappeared. Now, please, no more levity.
Sorry, Harold.
It's Harrison.
Sorry, Harry.
All right. I'm quite all right. Now, I realize that you have quite a sense of humor, John, but in a matter as important as this...
Yeah, sure. Now, let's have the story.
Very well. A few years ago, Ricardo Amerigo was one of the world's leading concert violinists, as famous in London, Paris, Rome, as in the concert halls of this country.
Uh-huh.
Such virtuosity, almost unbelievable. I shall never forget one evening here in our Academy of Music. He had just finished a perfectly brilliant Wieniawski. Amazing technical performance.
Yeah, well...
And for an encore, he played Sarasate's Zapatiado. Even more brilliant.
Harry...
But the audience wouldn't let him leave the stage. Ricardo Amerigo...
has disappeared.
Oh, yes.
And you're in a hurry to get on with the case.
I'm sorry. Now, thinking of his superlative performance that night carried me away. Yes, he's dead. Disappeared. And the violin? No trace.
Dead? You didn't say that before.
I know. You see, there's no proof of death. No body. Disappeared.
Well, don't let me shock your finer sensibilities, Harry. Murder?
We have thought of that, of course.
Who's we?
The Port Morris police. Port Morris, New Jersey, that is.
Oh.
Yes, you see, since Amerigo's car went through the bridge rail, crashed right through it, and plunged into the river stream...
Trying to tie Harry down to pertinent facts that would help me in my investigation was, futile. At least 3 times during the next half hour, he went off on glowing descriptions of violin recitals he had known. Heifetz, Selman, Chrysler, and so on. But he did come up with 1 or 2 things I wanted. First, Amerigo and his fiddle had been driving down from Philadelphia to some spot on the South Jersey seashore. Crossing an old wooden bridge over a little stream, an inlet from the ocean, the car had smashed through the guardrail and gone to the bottom of the inlet. The car, of course, was found. Amerigo and his violin, no. Second, and just as important, the name of the beneficiary of Amerigo's policies. Item 2 on expense account, $1 even. Taxi to the Harnell building, also on Walnut Street, in the office of Peter Corbin, Amerigo's booking agent. The building was plush, but Corbin's office was about as bare as I'd ever seen. An old beat-up desk, a battered filing cabinet, and a couple of straight chairs. That was it.
Come in, Dollar. Come in. Sit down.
Corbin was chewing the stub of a cigar that he'd forgotten to relight for at least a couple of days. We made with the usual howdy-do's.
Well, your man Branson told you exactly right, Dollar. I'm Ricardo Amerigo's sole and only beneficiary.
Well, isn't that a bit unusual for a man's agent to be his heir? Or, was it because you were old personal friends?
I'm going to give it to you straight. I brought Amerigo over to this country. Myself, my own sole expense. I actually gave him the build-up. I started his whole entire career. I kept him on top, all at my own expense.
Well, didn't you collect a regular agent's commission on his earnings?
Oh, sure. Plenty more. Why kid about it? Sure, while he was working.
What's that supposed to mean?
Bottle.
What?
Yeah, started hitting the bottle. Bad, not good. And believe me, the word gets around fast. Instead of making me money, himself, too, of course, he started costing me money. But you see, he never saved anything, even when he was earning big. You know how these artists are.
Yeah, I've heard.
Well, it's the same with all of them. He got in debt actually up to his ears. And nobody, no family, no relatives, nobody to pull him out. Nobody but me. Big-hearted Corbin.
So you had him take out a lot of insurance and name you as beneficiary?
Well, that was his idea, actually. Of course, he always did have the Amati insured. That's his violin.
So I learned.
Oh, you know about violins?
No.
Oh. Well, but the life insurance, that was his own idea. Double indemnity, all that sort of stuff.
Double indemnity?
Oh, yeah. But guess who had to dig up the moolah for the last couple premiums?
Big-hearted Corbin.
You're right.
Not a bad investment, though, was it?
What? Hey,
couple of
wait
thousand
a
in
minute.
premiums, and you stand to collect plenty. If we can find proof that he's dead, and if we can't recover
I don't like
the...
that, Dollar.
I don't either, Corbin. It doesn't smell good.
Oh, you think me, his own agent, actually rigged something like that for one of my best friends? You think that... Listen, wise guy. Even if I did have any of a such idea, it'd be crazy. Anything actually as obvious as that.
Well, sometimes the most obvious is the best cover-up.
Oh, get out of here, Dollar. Unless you want somebody to start collecting on your insurance.
Even if it isn't you, huh?
Get out! So help me.
Yeah, pretty obvious. And every time you open your mouth... Oh, no, you don't. Why is it that people who telegraph their punches are always the first to start swinging? I don't know. Anyhow, I left Corbin to pick himself up and start thinking about some alibis he might need. And in the cab back to my hotel, I did a lot of thinking myself. Sure, the obvious off times is the best cover-up. And yet it might be too obvious. Far too obvious.
Branson here?
Johnny Dollar here.
Oh, John, good. Listen, at least there'll be no double indemnity to pay in the Amerigo matter. For accidental death, that is. You see...
Wait a minute. About an hour ago, you weren't even sure he's dead. Did somebody find the body?
No, unfortunately, but I've just received a call from the Port Morris police. They completed their examination of Amerigo's car. After they pulled it out of the creek, of course.
I hope so.
John, they found conclusive evidence of murder.
Harry, I'll call you from Port Morris. Expense account, item 2. Subway, ferry, train, and bus fares to South Vineland, New Jersey. South Vineland because Ad Bowles lived there, and I knew that if anything at all happened in the heart of sunny southern Jersey, Ad would know about it. Retired and raising some of those wonderful South Jersey sweet potatoes and peaches with plenty of hired help, he amused himself by moseying around, getting to know everybody and everything that happened in his section of the state. He had an insatiable curiosity and money enough to keep it satisfied.
Hi, you conniving, chiseling son of a gun. I've been waiting for you to get here. What took you so long?
Hey, what was that conniving, chiseling crack, son?
We're still on expense account, aren't you?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, and so help me, nobody in history ever had the knack of padding out an expense account the way you can. And collect those fancy commissions on top. When I was a private investigator...
Who is retired?
You call this retired? 270 acres of sandy soil from which to try to wrestle the poor living?
Oh, no, wait a minute. That Cadillac Eldorado out front, that belongs to one of the hired hands.
983 peach trees.
And isn't that a landing field I see out there through the window?
A lot of sweet potato land to be cultivated. Well, yes. Say, why didn't you fly down or let me know and I'd have picked you up? Look, with all the time I have on my hands...
I thought you said you were very
busy. Yeah. How long are you going to stay? So I can figure out where we'll go or what we'll do.
Ed, I'm on a case.
Well, sure. Ricardo Amerigo and his priceless fiddle.
Oh, no.
It was easy. When I heard about him going over the bridge, I contacted Barney Peters of the Port Morris PD. From Barney, I learned all about the next of kin. His agent, that is.
Pete Corbin.
Right. And that boy at Philadelphia Mutual, Harry Branson. And I knew Branson wouldn't call anybody but you in on the case. So here you are.
Still a private eye, aren't you, Ed?
Gotta have some way of killing time.
And I suppose you have the whole case solved.
Yep.
Well, according to Harry Branson, who heard from the Port Morris police just before I left Philly, it was murder.
Oh, you point killer. I thought I'd be the one to tell you that.
No, sorry. The cops knew it first.
Second, I told them.
Huh?
Yeah, I showed them where somebody'd used a hacksaw on the steering arm of Amerigo's car when they dragged it out of the creek.
Uh-huh. So that was it.
Yep.
And who wielded the hacksaw?
Well, Pete Corbin. Who else?
Why?
Who else stood to benefit by Amerigo's sudden trip to the great beyond?
No. It's too easy, Ed.
What's more, he's the only one who had constant and complete access to Amerigo's car. Why, he not only mothered little Ricky, clothed and fed him and kept him in booze, but he paid his rent, swept out his apartment, serviced his car.
No, it's too easy.
And Johnny, that car was even kept locked in Pete Corbin's own garage. And Corbin had the only key.
Where did you learn that?
From Corbin's landlord, by phone, of course. Said he thought Corbin did that so Ricky couldn't go out driving when he was drunk. And me? I think it was the other way around.
He'd only let him drive when he was drunk, huh? Instead of a good chance of smashing up in what would look like accidental death.
So that Corbin would collect the double indemnity. It's open and shut.
Any proof, Sherlock?
Just get to Corbin, throw it all at him, and break him down. Maybe he'll even find the hacksaw tucked up his sleeve.
Too easy.
Any bets that it isn't Corbin?
Yeah, I'll bet you.
You name it.
My commission on the case.
I'll match it. Oh, and plus your expense account.
Look, Ed, I want to see that car and the bridge and the creek, anything else I can find.
Sure, I'll fly you down there. Then we can go on over to Atlantic City, hit some of the night spots. Your treat. You know, so we can build up the expense account enough for me to collect plenty.
Ed Bowles had been a pretty good investigator in his day, seldom gone off half-cocked. Yet all his evidence was purely circumstantial. And where was the body? What's more, Pete Corbin acted anything but scared. Or so I thought until I put through a routine call to Harry Branson. He was worried. He had a right to be. Pete Corbin had packed a bag, jumped into his car, and disappeared.
Now, here's our star to tell you about tomorrow's intriguing episode of this week's story.
Tomorrow, a soggy day in a soggy South Jersey swamp. And a discovery almost too good to be true. Join us, won't you? Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, starring Bob Bailey, is transcribed in Hollywood. Written by Sam Dawson, it is produced and directed by Jack Johnstone. Be sure to join us tomorrow night, same time and station, for the next exciting episode of Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Roy Rowan speaking.
January 16th, 1956, yours truly, Johnny Dollar on Classic Radio Theater. Visit my webpage, if you would, please, classicradio.stream. There you can stream our shows on demand, learn more about classic radio collecting. You can find our social media links there, and you can contact me, classicradio.stream. And if you miss a day on this station, you do not have to miss a single show. Our shows are available anywhere podcasts are served, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, even Facebook, and Amazon Podcasts or Audible. You can find them anywhere. Just search for Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, except no imitations. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Please thank this radio station, support the advertisers, tell your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater on your favorite radio station.